Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, 5 Tips in 20 Minutes, Microsoft SharePoint, presented by our expert technical instructor at New Horizons, Ed McRae. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'll be assisting in moderating our session today. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or that Q&A option for our short Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Ed.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and hello and welcome to our webinar. This is 5 tips in 20 minutes, Microsoft SharePoint. During this session, we're going to take a look at some things that we can do with lists to organize our team data more effectively. We'll look at how we can improve document management with modern library features, and we'll also take a look at how we can customize web parts for better site engagement, and we'll see what other things we can throw in our time as well. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and pull up a SharePoint site here. And let's start by talking about lists. And I think that the thing that I would like to focus in on here concerning lists are the usage of views and how we can use views to leverage the data inside of our list and allow our users to be able to see that data in a variety of ways. So we know that lists in SharePoint are tools for storing just raw data. We're not interested in the specific document format. We're just storing raw data, and that's what we would use a list to do. I have a couple of different examples of lists in here. Here is a list that just has a list of courses inside of it, like so. And we can see all of these different things that are inside. Here I also have another list that's just going to show up already in a different view in a gallery setup. Let's go back over to our schedule here and just look at what we've got. All right. So you can see an example of how views can be useful already because I have a default view set up inside of this list that is filtering to only show opened courses. All right. So this is showing me opened courses in the list. It is immediately filtering out or opening or filling courses, and it's filtering out any courses that are closed, right? So I could remove these filters right here by just hitting these X's, and we can see that, of course, we have some closed courses from the beginning of the year, right? But that is showing up automatically. I also have a calendar mode here that our users are able to utilize to be able to see things in calendar fashion, right? So I want to go over how I created these views, and let's look at some of the other options that are available for views here. And views can be for our personal usage as a site owner or administrator, or they can be for the usage, like we're seeing in this case, of other users. In either case, to create a view, I would go right over here to the upper right-hand corner and click Add View. And I can give my view a name. I also see that I have 4 different options for how I want my view to be displayed. It can be in a traditional list where we have columns and rows. It can be in a calendar mode, as we already saw. It can be in a gallery, or it could be in a project board style view, okay? And so I think the first one I'd like to do is a traditional list, and I think that I would like to have that list grouped by the course name, I think. So I'm going to just call this grouped by course name. All right. Now, when I'm creating a view, I have this checkbox here that is checked by default that says make this a public view. And this means that other users would be able to switch to this view if they wanted to, right? It'll show up over here for them, just like we see these views showing up for me currently. So I'm going to click create, and it creates this view. But initially, I don't see, it's going to just be a raw listing of things. And so what I need to do now, since this is just a regular list view, is go in and edit this view however it is that I want it to be edited. So to do that, I'm going to click on the view here in this tab in the upper right. I'm going to come down here and choose Edit Current View. And this is going to take me into my classic view settings area where I will be able to do several different things. Now, first of all, I have the ability in here to make this now the default view that appears whenever a user clicks on this list. Not interested in doing that. I could choose here to set up what fields or columns are going to be displayed. And I could, let's say I don't want the number of registered to be displayed. Registration status, we'll keep that there. That's fine. And there's other columns, of course, I could add in. I could choose how I want my information to be sorted. And so I have different options here for sorting. Let's sort this based on the course start. And then I have a filter where if I wanted my information to be filtered in a certain way, I could do that. We'll just leave everything as is. And then there's some other stuff down here, right? I have a tabular view I can turn on. I also have a group by option, and that's what I'd like to do here. I want to group this data together. And I would like to group this together by the course name, right? So it puts all of them together, and I can expand that and see the individual entries for each course. If I desired to do a multi-level of grouping, I do see the option here to do that as well. And I see that by default, my groups are going to be collapsed. If I wanted to have them expanded by default, I could do that as well. Okay. We have some other things here. I could choose to get some totals in place here if I wanted to. I could, set up the styling of this, and just some other stuff down here I could do. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Let's take a look at what we've got. Here we go. It's grouped by course name like so. So I can see all of my courses. I could expand them, see all of the specific entries within each course. All right. So we now have this grouped by course name added to our list of views here. All right. We have open courses. We have calendar mode. All right. Let's do another view here. I'm going to say add view, and I want to do more of a project board style view where these are grouped by the course category or course type. All right. So I'm going to say board view, and we're going to group these by the course type. And I'm going to call this grouped by type. Now notice that all of my fields are not showing up here. Matter of fact, instead of that, let's do group by instructor. But notice that all of my fields are not showing up in here. Only my choice fields are appearing here. So for some of these views, we are going to need to have certain fields of specific data types that we could then utilize, right? And then we can choose that from there. We'll go ahead and make this a public view. That's cool. Create, I say. Right, it creates it. And there we go. We have a nice board view here where I can scroll through, look at all of the courses for each instructor. So this is a nice like project management agile style view here that I could utilize, right? So that is pretty cool. All right, this is good. Views are also going to work or be available inside of um, document libraries as well. And we would have the exact same options for those inside of there. All right. So when we take a look at libraries, note that the same styles and same options for views are available there as well. Let's take a look at libraries. I'm going to go back to my home screen. And I am going to pull up a library. I don't have one yet in my navigation here. So I am going to go into my site contents. And let's pull up a library. All right, we're going to take a look at this. Pardon me for one quick second, please. All right, my apologies. Let's take a look at a couple of features here with libraries. One of the great new features that's available to us is the fact that we can look through any other libraries that we want within our SharePoint site, kind of similar to how we would work with Windows Explorer inside of just our regular windows by going to this drop down right here. So I see course development files here. And if I go to this drop down arrow that's right here, I am able to switch to any other document library that I want. So we have course development files, I have course media, right? And I can switch to any of these others that I want here, right? By using my drop down here. All right, so that is a cool feature that we're available to do. I also have the ability, like I said, to get into different views. We see those options and things showing up over here on the upper right-hand corner, where I can get in here and get into all of that. Now, one of the things I want to show you here in a library, which is also available in a list, we would typically use it more in a library, are the options here for content approval, right? Because we have documents where oftentimes other people are going to be working inside of them. They are going to be updating things inside of the documents, and we don't necessarily want them to be visible until they are approved, right? So we want to make sure that the content is correct. So if I go into my document library settings, which I can do by going to my settings button here in the upper right, I can click on library settings. And then I have an option for more library settings. Now, from inside of here, I have the option to go into, and we'll actually see this underneath versioning settings. So if I click the link here for versioning settings, it'll load up here. And right across the top, we have the option here for requiring content approval for submitted items. It's turned off by default, but if I were to turn this on, what that's going to do is any changes that take place within the library will initially only be visible by the person who's created that item or made that change and anyone else who has administrative rights, right? So if somebody uploads document or even inside of a list, if somebody added in a new list item, the only ones who initially would see that would be the person who's creating it and anyone who is an administrator, right? So this is fantastic. And we see that option or those options I just mentioned showing up down here. It says who should see draft items in this document library, all right? It says only users who can approve items and the author of the item, right? So that is the default setup there. So this is great inside of a library like this, or in a list if I was doing something that had sensitive information in that list. Let's say, for example, an expense report list or library, where I only want people to be able to view the expense reports that they've submitted and not anyone else's. I basically would turn this feature on within the list or the library, and then I just wouldn't approve anything. And then basically only the people who created the different items would be able to see their own items. All right. So that's pretty cool. Now, while we're in here, we might as well talk about these versioning options that are in place. Versioning is something that is turned on by default inside of our libraries, and it is going to allow us to be able to have different versions for each document. So whenever someone, makes a change to a document, instead of it overwriting the original one, it is going to save a new version with those changes inside of it. All right. By default, major versioning is turned on, and we're going to want to leave that alone, right? The option here for major and minor versions, that can be very confusing because what'll end up happening is when a user makes a change, it'll actually prompt them and say, hey, is this a major version you're saving here or a minor version? And unless you have a well-oiled machine where it's very clear what constitutes a major versus a minor version, right, that's going to create a lot of confusion. So we want to leave it on major versions here, all right? One of the newer features that's available here in terms of version control in a library or list is we do have the ability to time out versions, right? So that versions don't last past a certain time limit. And this is cool because versions, even though inside of the library we would only see just the one document, on the server, it is actually saving each separate version as its own document, which means each version is contributing to the size of the library and ultimately the size of the site as a whole. And so having it set up where these automatically get removed after a certain amount of time, I probably wouldn't say automatic because it does not specify the amount of time. It just says overtime. I don't know what that means. So I would come here and do manual and then put a number of days, right? Let's say we want versions to go away after 90 days, for example, and then it would go ahead and it would do that. Another thing that we could do and probably want to do is limit the number of versions that we can have of a document for the same reason, right? Each version that's created adds to the size of the library and the site as a whole. So I would want to, limit the number of versions that are allowed, so you don't have someone who's chronically saving and then it blows up your site spacing there, right? So we want to put that in place. So if I were to click OK here, since I turned on content approval, we are going to automatically see, if I go back into the library here, we are going to automatically see an approval status column pop up here. And as we can see here, I've got one document that is approved and these other guys are pending here. And if I were to want to approve one of these documents, I could go in and click on the three dots next to that particular document. If I go down here into the more area, I see an option for approve/reject. I can click on that and there we go, right? It's set to pending. I could change this to approved if I wanted everyone to see it, or rejected if I didn't want it to be finalized, right? So if I said approved and I clicked OK, this is now going to automatically change to approved, right? And so that is fantastic. Now, again, if I were using this as a way to make sure that people only saw their own stuff, then I just wouldn't take that step of approving things and everyone would only see the items that they created. Okay. So that's a really cool feature that we're able to implement there. All right. Lastly, here with the time that we have, let's look at how we can manipulate and do some things with pages and add some things. We'll look at some different web parts and things we can add in. So if you look at this home page that I have right now, I've got a document library here. I've got some resource links here that I'm able to use to go and look at different links. Takes me to stuff right about EdCorp here, right, which is a completely fictional company about our instructors. We have all of these instructors in here, right? And we can play the game of guess which of these instructors are AI generated and which ones are not. And the answer is the only one that's not is me, because you guys can see what I look like clearly here. But we got that going on there. But let's look at some of the other things that we can do on a page in regards to web parts. Now, I even have a calendar, that calendar mode I showed you, displayed down here. Let's take a look at how we can manipulate and add in some other web parts. I am going to edit my page. So I'm going to click edit. And it's going to go ahead and take me into edit mode for this page. Okay. Now, first of all, I can click on a particular web part and I can begin to manipulate it using the settings over on the right, right? So if I were to go into any of these properties for any of these links, could change them, update some things, right? If I clicked on this library here, I could choose the view that I want. So that's how this calendar is being displayed. If I click on this list, I can see it's 2025 schedule. I can see the view is set to calendar mode. As you can see here, I could change this to any of these other views. We see all the views I created sitting right there. Okay. Let's see if we can add something else in here. And I think that I would like to actually add in a Power BI report in here that just kind of shows some of the statistics for our course enrollments and things like that, and maybe display that up at the top of our screen here. So I'm going to add in a web part. I already have a section here. If I hover over this part of my section, I see a plus sign for adding in a new web part. I'm going to click that plus sign. And let's just look at some of the options that are available to us, right? Very quickly here. We can add in text, right? Buttons, cards, image galleries or images, a hero, which is basically like a image gallery as well, links, YouTube videos, all kinds of cool stuff, right? Document libraries, just a listing of recent documents that were opened by a user, files and media, um, some other interesting things. A countdown timer if we had an event coming up, right? We have a people list, an event or group calendar. But here's what I want to get to: data analysis. I can put a form here, a Power BI report. All these things are here. Also, regional information, right? I could put a map or a weather widget or a clock, right? So all these things are available to us. I'm going to go ahead and choose Power BI because that's what I'm interested in right now. And let's go into the properties here for Power BI. And I am going to want to add a report now. I thought that it would let me just choose. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump over to Power BI real quick here and just grab a link for a report. And then once I paste that link in here, I'll be able to choose the page and what it is that I want to display from my report. Right. So let's go ahead and go into our Power BI workspace here. We've got an EdCorp training workspace. Why not? And let's go ahead and grab. Oh, it's going to make me go into my workspace. That's fine. We'll just grab one of these existing ones. I won't be able to access the report I wanted to, but it's fine. Let's just grab this revenue data report here. And let's just grab a link to that. And use this link. I believe this should work for me. Let's see if that actually works. If not, we'll go a different direction here. Looks like it is working for me. Very good. I'm going to display this particular report only has one page, so no pages to choose here. I can choose my display size. And when I'm done, I can hit republish. And that is going to now show up on my page. So I can very easily go into a page, add whatever web parts that I wanted into a particular section. I could also click on this section here. Let's look at let's go back into edit mode. I want to make this section collapsible. So this is an optional section that people can expand or contract. I want to look at the properties of this, and I'm going to choose to make this section collapsible. So I'll turn that on. I can set up a heading for that. I'm not going to. I'm going to turn that off there. And I'm going to set the default of that to be collapsed. Let's republish. And there we go, right? If people want to, they can click this to expand that section and see all of this content that's in here. And if they didn't want to, they could collapse it like so. Okay. So very cool functionality that we can add into a page, right? We can very easily add in additional web parts. We can also take sections and choose to make them collapsible or expanded by default. All right, so we've taken a look at some things we can do with lists. We've looked at some things we can do with document management, as well as some things with SharePoint pages. At this point, I'm going to turn the floor back over to you, Mariella, and let's see if anyone has any questions that we can answer within our time remaining.
Absolutely, Ed. I will go ahead and give our audience a little bit more time to throw in any last minute questions, but we did have a couple ready to go. First one here from Nora. How would I post an HTML page and content onto a SharePoint page?
So I lost you after the HTML part. How would you read that one more time for me?
Yeah, absolutely. How would I post an HTML page and content onto a SharePoint page?
Well, there are a couple of ways you could do that. One, you could just do that as a link, but I'm thinking that you are referencing actually wanting the page to show up in a section. And if we take a look at our web parts here, I do believe, and I may be confusing this with, I might be thinking about Microsoft Teams here. So my apologies if I am off base on this. But if we just look at some of the web parts that are available, I do think that we have the option in here to actually post a page. Let's see. I mean, we can do existing sites. I'm not. I might be thinking about Microsoft Teams here because I don't see an option to other than posting a link to actually post a full page. What you could do though is we do have the ability to embed, and we do have the ability to do a code snippet, and so you might need to use that functionality to have the actual page be embedded within. I believe it's Microsoft Teams I'm thinking about where we can easily have a page be displayed.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I'll go right on to the next question. What is the source of the 2025 schedule? Is that an XLS sheet, or where is the data being pulled from?
So once the data is in SharePoint, it's housed in SharePoint. So it's not being pulled from anywhere. It did originate as an Excel sheet, and then what you do is you import it into your site, and then it lives in the site. So it's not actively pulling from that source any longer. And you'll see here, if I were to go to, once this loads up here, if I were to go to new and I were to go to list, if we look at our sources here, you'll see that we have the ability to import, right? So we're not linking, but we're importing from an Excel spreadsheet or another list. And then it becomes its own entity once it's inside of SharePoint.
Awesome. Great tip. And last question here in our last minute. Is it possible to set up lists in a board view to operate more like a Kanban board where you can move items from to do, working, done, etc.?
We may be able to do that right now. Let's take a quick look at that. If I go into my schedule here, I have not tried to do that, but let's find out together, right? If we go over to our grouped by instructor, let's see if it lets me move these around, and it looks like it does. Yeah. So we can drag and drop from one section to another if we wanted to do so in our board view.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, that looks like it is our last question. So, thank you so much to our awesome audience for throwing in a couple questions for us. And I did want to touch on if you missed out on any part of this session, we will absolutely be sharing this recording with all of you in an email after the webinar. So, be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much, Ed. This was a lot of fantastic info. And if you want any more info on this topic or want to learn a little bit more, go ahead and visit us at newhorizons.com or hit that link I dropped in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you, Ed, for your awesome insight.
My pleasure.
Awesome, everyone. Well, have a fantastic rest of your day and week, and we hope to see you soon in the classroom. Bye for now.